Hi, I'm Peter Boyles, do the morning show right next door here on 710 KNUS, and of course, doing the shoot. This is episode 6 of the shoot. Thank you to Mark Crowley, who's behind the cameras. And again, thank you to Dr. Julie McCallan at Centogenics, keeping an old man alive so I can keep doing these shows. There's no one better. This is our 6th episode, and everyone knows the voice, but I got my hair cut just like his in honor of doing the shoot. Ladies and gentlemen, he snuck out the back door without saying goodbye. One of the true legends in our business, the talented Jeff Hildebrandt. And as we go to press, as they say, Crowley did not know that you had left the company, which shows you the impact that you've had.
You know, I've always tried to keep a low profile. I didn't realize how low it was.
I knew you were leaving, and he's now in retirement. We'll talk about this stuff. But I didn't know you had. And one morning I was saying, well, where's Jeff? You know, because you would do that midday sometime shift.
Right.
And I don't know, somebody said, probably Tom, said, no, he retired.
Yeah.
Like, no, he didn't. Yes, he did.
I'm semi-retired.
You're a lot of stuff. I know no one better. He has been a gift to work with and a dear friend and a legend in the business and knows more about this business probably than a lot of other guys. And so we're talking before it all begins. I didn't know about you and John Wayne's family.
Oh, yeah.
Tell that story. It's amazing.
One of the perks that I have had, one of the blessings that I've had, is the ability to work with people that I have idolized in the business, that I grew up watching. Well, John Wayne died, of course, and his family had taken on the John Wayne cancer efforts. And as part of the job that I had with the Westerns channel, I interviewed the Wayne family, and I was around them at a number of occasions. So they were, a few years back, they were going to auction off John Wayne memorabilia that he had accumulated over decades. I mean, there were storehouses full of stuff that he'd come home and throw it in a pile, and somebody'd throw it in a warehouse. Well, it took them a couple of years to go through this when they decided, we got to auction this stuff off, get rid of it. And so after they had it all cataloged, they decided on the auction. And I was talking to them, and I said, well, this would be a great story because of the number of people who love John Wayne and watch the movies. So I went out to the L.A. area where their office is, the John Wayne office, and interviewed Ethan, who is the youngest son, who is now running the business, Marissa, Patrick, and Pilar.
Wow.
And interviewed Anita Swift, his first granddaughter. And we talked about growing up with John Wayne as dad, as grandpa, and crawling around the furniture in his office. And it was all as a prelude to this auction that was coming up. And one of the stories Ethan told me, then I went down to Dallas where they were actually going to hold the auction at an auction house down there, and they had the stuff all set up. And I went through and talked with Ethan, the youngest son, about what was there and how they found the stuff, all of that. Dean Smith, stunt actor, Olympic gold medalist, and actor who was in 10 John Wayne movies and doubled a lot of people, came down, and we walked through it, and he said, oh yeah, this is the dress I wore when I doubled Catherine
Hepburn.
No. Who am I thinking of? The Australian. Kate, cut that out.
It just happens. Anyway, it's okay. That's why you're retired.
Anyway, so he said, yeah, this is when I fell down the steps in McClintock, and
Maureen O'Hara.
Maureen O'Hara,
Sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and this is what I was wearing when I doubled her falling into the water trough in the McClintock scene, and when I ran down the street chasing the buggy and all of that. Anyway, we went through all of that, and then I got back to the Westerns channel, and I was getting ready to start putting these pieces together on air.
Had you filmed or taped all of this?
Oh yeah, we'd videotaped everything, and get a call from the lawyer for the station, who had just moved from another network, by the way, from a competing network. He'd been hired. Oh no, that's commercial. You can't run that because people are going to be spending money, and we can't advertise anything like that. And, you mentioned the name of the auction house. You can't do that because that constitutes a commercial. Well, we'd only been doing it for 8 years, and nobody had said a thing. Anyway, one little story that I wanted to ask
you. Where is that video somewhere in a vault somewhere? Or?
Yeah. Well, it was. Yeah, I have no idea where it is now. Anyway, one story that Ethan told me. They had these little cards that were about half the size of a business card, and they had a tray with these things just dumped out on them. And on one side, it said John Wayne printed. On the other side, it was written out, John Wayne. And I said, "What is this?" Ethan said, "When we were kids, we'd walk around Newport Beach with Dad, and people would come up and want his autograph. And we carried these little cards, so the kids, the children, would hand out these cards that had the autograph on them already. And, and I'm sitting there, and there's hundreds of these cards, and I'm thinking, I'd love to have one of those cards myself."
And
I left it in the dish. I got busy with something else and forgot to ask Ethan if I could have one.
There's so many great books written about John Wayne's life, and he and John Ford are the team.
Yeah.
Did you get the sense that his kids liked him? Because I always thought they did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He made a real effort to be Dad.
Yeah.
And not John Wayne.
And he put him in the movies. He put him in his films.
Oh, yeah. And when he went on trips, he'd put him on the boat.
Yeah.
They'd all go with him.
Yeah.
So,
he took him to Ireland. I know that. When he did The Quiet Man. I know that.
Yeah.
And so there's a great story about lawyers. You have a lot of great lawyer stories. The Gene Autry story about meeting Gene's. Tell that one, because that's like lawyers in this business. Wow.
All right. So I'd been at the Westerns Channel not very long, and I was starting a lot of different activities, a lot of different programs. And I wanted to get Gene Autry because we were running some Gene Autry movies. Yeah. And he's an idol of everybody,
Yeah.
And so I call his lawyer, his agent, and say, "We're with the Westerns Channel, and we'd like to interview Gene about his career and get his story for the Westerns Channel." And the lawyer said, "Well, he would love to, I'm sure. There's only one thing. He doesn't do anything for less than $100,000. And at this point, I mean, we're lucky to be able to pay the bills at the Western Channel because we had no income coming in. It was real small, and $100,000 was just out of the question. And so I said, well, if that changes, let me know. And then years later, after Gene had passed away, they were having a 100th birthday celebration for him out in California. And his fan club was there. I was there. And we toured the home with his wife and did a whole bunch of other stuff. Anyway, as we were shooting this for the Westerns Channel, I got a message from the head of Autry Enterprises saying that Mrs. Autry wants to know why you never wanted to interview Gene.
Wow, what a story.
And I said, she said, we used to sit and watch on television. We'd watch the Westerns channel and watch his movies and everything. And we saw these interviews with other actors. And why didn't you ever want to talk to Gene? And I said, I did. Yeah. You were the first. Yeah. And your lawyer wanted $100,000 and we just didn't have it. She had no idea. Gene had no idea.
Sure. He was trying to get a cut.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And Gene was incredibly wealthy.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure he would have known what I know about Gene, but...
Yeah, he wouldn't have charged anything.
You know, we were talking about, people paying people to work with you.
Yeah.
And doing radio, I've only had 2 people want money to appear.
3.
You. Crowley. 4. I had, this is true, Cha-Cha Muldowney, the great drag racer.
Right.
And I wanted to do an interview, and she wanted front money to do an interview.
Yeah.
And the other one, we could guess 100 years and you never get it. William the Refrigerator Perry.
No kidding.
Was appearing at a car show. He was the get for the car show. And I don't even know how much money they wanted. I mean, it didn't matter. I went, what am I going to talk about other than, because he was here for the car show. It would have been fun to interview him.
Sure.
But they wanted money. We don't pay people to do radio. They didn't pay us. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, there are some people, and I've experienced this, who have learned their lesson well and demand payment before.
Well, Chuck Berry won't work with us. You're paying him in the front. That's the great story.
Yeah. And I had an occasion where I was out in Las Vegas doing a music video with a guy who had recorded a song, and I rewrote the words to it to fit the Westerns channel. Mm-hmm. And so we had a band come out. It was a country Western song, and we get there to do it, and he says, "Do you have the check?" Well, no, you're going to fill out a request, right? An invoice. No, I don't do anything without the money first. Okay. So I take my American Express card down and get the cash and give him the money. We're all set to go. Boom, everything works. But I did not expect that at all. Other people have done the same thing. And then I learned my lesson. I learned the lesson when I was paid to come to an event to perform and be an entertainer at the event out in Arizona. At the end of the weekend, the guy writes me a check. And
I know.
I'm just lucky that they paid the plane fare themselves and the hotel because that check bounced. And I didn't know till months later that it had actually bounced. And not only did I not get the money that he paid me, I had to pay the bank for dealing with a bad check.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Hildebrandt, Peter Boyles, The Shoot. This is episode 6. And
are we ready to start now?
Turn the cameras on. Where did you get into business? How old were you when you got into business?
Oh, I was 23. My first radio job was down in Colorado Springs. Yeah. I was in the Army at Fort Carson, and I worked midnight to 2, 5 nights a week.
What was the format?
It was big band and easy listening.
Adult contemporary.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, it's midnight and you should be asleep. What are you doing listening to this radio station?
Sure.
But my theme song that I picked was "Sentimental Journey."
Glenn Miller, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was my first gig, and then I got into it full time when I got out of the service.
The first time, and I've trying to write about it and talked about it, the first time you knew, or at least first time I knew. I just went, wow.
That you wanted to do it?
Yeah.
When was your first time?
I was working at the AAA Auto Club for Dan Hopkins, and I called it Counting Cars. We were doing traffic reports, and I had been hired as the writer. And I was stealing from other radio stations. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
Danny and I bought a push-button radio in a junkyard on Santa Fe. It was a Mercury.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about formats. I didn't know about dial position. I didn't know any of the stuff that we kind of lumped into now. But I did know that at 5 minutes after the hour, or whatever number it was, KHOW would Sky Spy standing by, and they'd do a report. Dick Dillon was at Kim, and a couple different guys were at KOA, and they were flying fixed wing. They weren't flying rotor wings.
Yeah.
And I punched the button, I'd steal.
Mm-hmm.
And if they all three said the same thing, I figured it's real, And then I'd hand it to the on-air guy.
Yeah.
And he would, but that's really, I was a writer for the traffic report.
Yeah.
And then the guy that I eventually replaced after 3 or 4 different guys had a hard time getting there on time.
Yeah. Oh.
And, well, we know the drill.
Yeah.
So, long story short, I got the gig, and I had said to Danny, who I love to death, he should be in here one day to do a shoot. I said, I can do all these jobs. I can be the on-air guy, I can be the stealer, the traffic writer, and I can save you money, and I forget what I was getting, like $3 an hour or something. Yeah. I said, and the on-air guy was making big bucks, like 10.
Yeah.
12
oh, yeah.
Whatever. Oh, yeah. And I said, I found a number in the middle, like $8. And I said, I'll save you money and give me the gig. And Danny thought about it and said, and I was going on the air because the guy wasn't there.
Yeah.
And we were doing fill-in, we were doing KOA, and I'd been, actually was Alan Berg's traffic reporter for a while, that kind of stuff. And so then I thought, wow, this is so great.
Yeah.
And I met Bob Lee, and and I met all those initial, Charlie Martin I met back then, and
sure.
all the guys that were legends. Who did you look up to? Who was the disc jockey that you heard that you thought, wow, I want to be that guy? Or
little background. A friend of mine got a job when we were in high school. Got a job at a local TV station in Kansas City, Missouri. And he was the listen to the traffic reporter guy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so his back was always turned to the camera, but he was in the shot in the newscast.
Yeah.
And so we'd sit there and there's Pat. All right,
Oh yeah.
And so I got all excited about it, and then we went away to college, and he got a job at a radio station in Warrensburg, Missouri, Central Missouri State College, and I went down to visit him one weekend and went to the radio station. And oh my gosh, this was in the day when the commercials were on
carts.
No, reel to reel,
okay.
Small
Even
reel to reel,
better.
And they had a board. There were pegs all over this board with these labeled things, and he'd get them down, put them on a tape player. Yeah. Anyway, that's what really triggered
lighting
it
up
for
when
me.
You walked in and went, oh man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah, and anyway, it was so
I
exciting.
People that how that felt the first time.
Yeah.
And I would have never thought of myself as doing this or doing radio or any of those things. I mean, it was like they were cool guys, and I wasn't. And,
yeah.
But I remember walking in and seeing the board, and then the turntables and the cart machines.
Oh yeah.
The microphones and the reel-to-reel on the wall. I can close my eyes and still see what that place looked like.
Yeah.
And you couldn't touch. You couldn't, your left and right arm, you couldn't reach out and touch the ends of the console.
Yeah.
Remember, there were sliders and knobs, and it looked like the Starship Enterprise.
And the record players.
How many? There was
3.
We had 2 on each side.
Yeah.
Cue this guy, cue that guy.
Yeah.
Cue this guy.
Oh, I had interesting, for me, it's interesting. When I was working in Lexington, Missouri, little radio station next to a cornfield. I mean,
oh no,
out there, this radio station was built with parts stolen from the factory.
Yeah, no, of course.
Anyway, oh gosh, now I forgot what story I was going to tell, but it was.
What was your shift?
Oh, any shift, early morning. and I had to do the pig reports, the farm reports.
Sure.
But there was I did Sunday morning, and this was a classic. I did, and the religious shows are all pre-recorded on tape.
Yeah.
And so the Church of Christ show did not show up one Sunday morning. It comes time for their half-hour program, and what am I going to do? I look over, and there's all these records, and Tennessee Ernie Ford is there, and he's got a religious record.
I know the LP.
Yeah.
Had a crucifix or cross behind
Something.
it. Light coming in.
Yeah. And so I pull that, I put it on, I start playing Tennessee Ernie Ford, and, I mentioned it's the Church of Christ Hour, and play other stuff. Well, Monday, it hits the fan. The Church of Christ people call in, how dare you play a Baptist music during the Church of Christ Hour?
What did you know, right?
I had no idea. No, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, I did one. I was, it was called the Hellenic Hour, and it was all in Greek. I'm not making the guys that are, and it was underwritten by this restaurant called the Athenian, and there was like a big Greek community in Denver, still is.
Yeah.
And so they did a show every Sunday called the Hellenic Hour.
Yeah.
All in Greek. And I can't speak English. So they said, you produce the show and we'll get you producing, meaning, flipping light switches.
Right.
And I don't know what I got, $20 or $25
Sure.
or something. And so the Greek announcers, and I run in Lucas, I still see Lucas and Andy Samaras and Paul Samaras and all these guys. So the Turks had invaded Cyprus. And I'm in grad school, and I'm kind of a little geeky kid. Anyhow, and they said, well, this is Dr. Krikos. These guys are, some of them still with us. And he wants to do an editorial. What do I know?
Yeah.
Right? So he does an editorial in Greek, and the only word I ever learned was discos, which was record.
Right.
And they'd have these records, big LPs, look like fraternities, like all. They hit play two, and they did sport. It was a great show, and they always took me out afterward for lunch and everything.
Yeah.
Hey, what do I know? So I come in the next day, and Gus Merkus is the boss, himself a Greek, who was one of the greats. He's going, and there's 3 guys in the lobby, and the same thing. And Gus is going to give me this. And he said, what'd you do yesterday, although not in those words? And I said, well, he said, those guys in the lobby are Turks. And I had to, and that's when I learned.
Yeah.
That you can make people mad, which, of course, we do daily. But I didn't know. I thought, hey, I'm like this innocent bystander, cueing records. And but Andy and I still laugh about that. And I saw Lucas and, and they said, oh, yeah, we remember when that happened. I said, you. So you learn how to take
the idea is just tell them, we have a half hour available. You can have your own show for a price.
This was on demand.
No.
Make that right.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But no. So where was the moment where you knew that this was it? You weren't going to go talk to somebody about other issues in life. You wanted to be a disc jockey or wanted to be in the business.
When I got out of the Army, I had been working and was still working for the telephone company. I was a special representative salesperson, dealt with big industry telephone needs, hotels, things like that. And I just thought, no, I'm out of this.
How old were you? 25?
Something like that. And that's when I went to, there was an opening in Lexington, Missouri, and I went there.
So you read it in the trades, or how did you find out that the gig was there?
I was doing a correspondence course in radio.
Yeah.
And it was very good correspondence course because they didn't talk about anything other than your voice and voice acting. And so the local representative told me that there was an opening. And of course, I'd had this wonderful resume from Colorado Springs, working midnight till 2.
Playing
so I've got all of this experience.
Yeah.
And so I went down there and did news interviews with politicians late at night, and things like that. And they said, okay, we'll hire you. And then I became a disc jockey.
What did they pay? Do you remember?
Oh, no, I have no idea.
Remember our great line, is this a paycheck or an insult?
Yeah.
It's a paycheck.
But I remember I said this was next to a cornfield, and they paid you in ears of corn as you left when the corn was ripe. You could hop the fence and take a couple of ears.
You have, and Mark's sitting here as well, you guys have great marriages.
Yes.
I mean, I admire you and I'm jealous of it. And Mark Crowley has a great marriage. And you have a great marriage.
Well, Mark Crowley is, he would be a wonderful person to be married to. I mean, his wife is the lucky one.
Yeah, right. But then Billy, who does our morning, Billy has a great marriage. Keise has a great marriage. Tommy has a great marriage. In this business, at least for certain of us, being married in this business was very hard for a number of reasons. How did your marriage hold together? Because your wife is wonderful.
She is, and I think it held together because of her.
Yeah.
I mean, she could have, at many times, said, you are gone all the time, especially when I went to work for the Westerns channel. You are gone all the time.
Yeah.
But as it was, when we were in radio, she was working, I was working, and we'd share stories, and we just hung out together.
Yeah.
She's my best friend.
Oh, she's great.
She's the only person I want to be with.
Yeah.
Actually,
How powerful is that?
I mean,
Mark's the same way.
I don't have many friends because I just want to hang out with my wife.
Mark said something, and this is a tribute to Mark, because we're talking about the people who refuse to get the shot, and so they won't get an operation or a hospital, and to me it's nuts. So I'm telling Mark, and Mark said, if they said to me, I can save my wife's life, but I have to remove my left arm, Mark said, hand me the knife.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's, I mean, I know that's you too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah. Maybe from the elbow down.
From the ear. When you transferred, and you tell great Burt Reynolds stories.
Oh.
And I'm a huge Burt Reynolds fan. Burt Reynolds fan. And there's all kinds of stories about Burt Reynolds. It was a Burt Reynolds line, I think, and they talked about his life, and he said most men would give 10 years of their life to have my memories.
Oh, yeah.
Probably true.
Probably true, yeah.
What was he like?
Yeah, he had some bad experiences, and there's an awful lot of bad press.
Yeah.
When he was ill for so long.
They thought he had AIDS.
And in reality, he had done a stunt in a river that...
Deliverance.
Yeah. And it had pollutants in the river, and so he had gotten some bugs and was really sick for a while. Anyway, I had a wonderful experience working with him. I mean, we worked at his place in West Palm, Florida, West Palm Beach, and I went down there the first time. He was hosting movies on the Action Channel.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted to do the Westerns channel, he said, but we already had Dennis Weaver doing that. And so he took action. And I went down there. We had movies and had scripts written for him, sent him off to him. I went down there the day before the shoot, and we went through everything. First time I met him in person, very personable.
Did you like him immediately?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Because he wasn't a star.
There it is.
Yeah. He was a guy he's getting paid to do a job, and, the only star problem that I had with him was he said, now, we're going to have my makeup guy from California, and you'll have to pay him because he's the one that does my makeup. All right. He gets paid 3 times as much as the local makeup person. Plus, we had to fly him round trip back and forth.
How many shows would you tape? How many shows would you do?
We would do 30.
Wow.
Basically 30 shows, 30 movie intros a day.
Wow, I believe that, sure.
And I did it in a day. We had basically 2 days to do it. But I did it in a day because we did the pre-shoot, go through it. Okay, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Let's. I want to add a story here. Now, the first day that we shot with him, I went in there with the attitude, just like with Dennis Weaver and the other people that I was working with. They want quiet on the set. Mm-hmm. Burt is not that way. Burt is a reactor to the crowd, and he plays to a crowd. So we have like 10 people on the crew standing behind the camera, mm-hmm. And he's acting like he's on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson telling the stories. And you know how he stops and does all this stuff.
Yeah, does the look, yeah.
Yeah, and so he's doing that, and I had told the crew, he's going to read these, just be quiet, please. And so they were. And he was kind of put off by it because he wanted the reaction. And finally, I got to the point, we broke lunch. I said, heck with it, react to him. People at home are going to know there's a crew here.
Yeah.
There's people. They're used to it. So forget it. It's not going to be straight reads. He's going to play
Burt
to
Reynolds.
the crowd.
Yeah, it's going to be Burt
He's
Reynolds.
going to be Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
And so that improved things from there. But the first thing he did when he came in is he went to every person on the crew.
You told me that.
Shook their hands, introduced himself,
right.
And got their name and talked to him a little bit as he's going around and everything. And he became instant friends with that whole crew. Sure. And so much so that we have somewhere, I have a picture of the whole crew with Burt, and somebody on the crew had gone to a novelty shop and bought these glasses and nose things,
Yeah.
And so
Marks thing,
and so we're all wearing these in the picture with Burt Reynolds, and he's got one on too.
Wow.
I mean,
you've talked to me so many times. You genuinely liked him.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Because
he took me around. We got in his car, and he said, "I want to show you the ranch."
Yeah.
And so we drove all the way around the ranch, and he stopped at this big pond, and he said, "That's Lake Dinah."
Yeah. For her, Dinah Shore.
Dinah Shore.
Sure.
And it had a tree house built there. I mean, it was a tree house, big multi-room tree house that he'd had built right at Lake Dinah. And he said when she came down, that's where she'd stay.
Yeah.
And he had in West Palm, there was he had his acting school that he had started there. He didn't participate a lot there, but it was going on. There was a museum that had the Smokey and the Bandit car. It had stuff from. It had the back bar from Gunsmoke.
You told me this story. That's great.
Yeah. And of course, he was in Gunsmoke.
Played the blacksmith.
Played the blacksmith.
Yeah.
And the other thing about that, his name was Quint in the show, Quentin. And Quentin Tarantino's mother, who was pregnant at the time, watched the show, named her son Quentin Tarantino over Burt Reynolds' character Quint from Gunsmoke. Anyway, I walk in, I'm talking to him about different things, and he said, "Wait a minute." And he goes over to his library and pulls out a book, and it's John Ford's stock company. And I think it was Harry Carey Jr. had written it, and he said, "Here, read this." And so I spent the night going through this book because the next day I was going to be with him, and had to know what was in this book about John Ford and Burt. See, now Burt never worked with John Ford, but Burt Reynolds had John Ford's desk from his office.
Yeah, love John.
And it was a double wide desk so people could sit on either side. And so Burt had that in his office. And I knew Harry Carey Jr., who married John Ford's daughter.
That's right.
Harry didn't have anything, very little, And I'd mentioned to him one time, Burt has Pappy Ford's desk. What?
Those guys, I mean, we talked many times about your favorite films, and and you've hosted all this stuff, and you know these people, you met them all, you're way ahead of me. But as a kid, and we don't realize the impact, maybe even doing this right now for anybody that sees it, the impact that these things have. And John Ford, I think, knew. I mean, I've read a couple books about John Ford, alcoholic, tough, made a lot of people's lives miserable, but at the same time, what's better than She Wore a Yellow Ribbon?
Oh, yeah.
Or The Quiet Man.
Right.
Or The Searchers. And you hosted all of these films on television.
We had people. It was interesting. Dennis Weaver, I worked with that lovely soul for 8 years.
You told me he was another great guy.
And he was a great guy with some great stories. And he had that Earthship home up in Ridgeway.
Well, that's when I met him.
Yeah. And interesting. After he left Gunsmoke, and he was doing McLeod. He had the house built. It was 6,000 square feet. And he went over to London to shoot a McLeod over there and was gone. And he came back, and the house had almost doubled in size because his wife decided, well, we need a garage, and we need an office down here, and we need a mud room, and all this stuff. And so he came back, and his house is now 10,000 square feet. And it was a beautiful home, beautiful home. I stayed there a couple of times.
But when you meet those guys, and, I've been lucky in this business to really meet, but there's people, and this may be difficult, there's people I wish I'd never met.
Okay.
Who
are they?
Stay away from this.
Who are they?
I can give you a list of guys like, man, I wish I'd never met that guy, because they had, I don't want to say impact, but you read their novels or you watch them and then they come in. But there are other people that you meet, like your experience with Burt Reynolds or your Dennis Weaver. You go, God, this guy's like, as advertised.
Right.
And he really is this, really good guy. And so one seems to balance the other, but there's people going like, how did you get there? And oftentimes, I remember when I got into business, I don't know if it happened to you, people would dismiss you, like, And I was, but now you meet a young guy, hey man, come on in, sit down and watch, you can. So it comes to the end, and you decide that's enough.
Oh, you asked me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
You asked me about who I looked up to.
Yeah.
There was a disc jockey who worked midnight till whenever in Kansas City by the name of Richard Ward Fatherly.
Wow.
Dick Fatherly. And I would listen to him at night, and I called him one night and said, hey, I'm studying to be in radio, and I'd love to come down. He said, come ahead.
Yeah, those guys.
Come ahead. Yeah. And so I went down to the radio station and hung out with him, and he said things like, there's the AP wire over there, go pull the copy for me. And so I didn't just sit there and watch him. He actually had things for me to do. Yeah. And so I'd call him, and we'd talk on the radio, and he'd tell me when Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water came out, we were talking, and he said, I don't really like that song. And I said, oh, I really do. I mean, it's great harmony and the message and all of that. I like. And he listened to it again, and he said, well, you're right. Yeah. You're right. It's a good song. But it was one of those things, and I didn't have anything to do, so midnight I'd go down there and hang out with him.
Oh, sure.
And he was...
But isn't that how you pick it up?
Watch what he's doing. Yeah. Then when I had my first gig down in Colorado Springs, what I did was I stood behind the disc jockey who was there, and I actually drew the board.
Oh, please, of course.
So I could go home and study what to do when.
The first time you sat down and...
Scared to death. Absolutely. And I know to this day what I said was so inane first time the microphone was on.
I wish I had that first 20 minutes or half an hour.
Oh,
just to make fun of I'm looking.
Just to make fun of yourself.
God.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the same experience. Jack Merker, the late Jack Merker, who had kind of shepherded me in to Cat Radio. Yeah. And Ed Green was there, Gus Merkus was there. It was a lineup, those guys were there. And he brought me in on a Friday to watch him. Because I was doing traffic and I'm going to school and everything. And he said, you're smart. And he said, you got a goofy voice, but I said, I'm looking for a weekend guy. And I'd never been in a radio station before in my life. Yeah. I've been doing traffic reports down a phone line. The blackout phone line, for a couple of years and worked around the business. And, got to meet guys. But I'd never been in a station. And the first time you walk in, it's like a cathedral for guys like us. And holy smoke. And then the second day I went back, I did travel and recreation reports for the Auto Club on Saturdays and Sundays, and I came down, and the second day, and by this time he made me watch him cue records, how to read a log, where to put the carts, that kind of stuff. And it was a daytimer, so it went off at whatever time it was.
Sundown, whatever.
Yeah, but I don't know what day it was. So with about a half an hour left in the show, and by this time I'd taken the on-air seat, but we had a jump mic, so he's the jock, and I'm just figuring out. And he got up, he walked out of the room. He said, "Well, you're on your own." True story. And that's where the other side of the wall was where the wire machine was, and everything's going to make a noise. And I stood up and threw up, and did probably the worst 30 minutes, whatever it was. I mean, and then we were all done, and the Playboy Club was upstairs. Yeah. And he said, "Let's go get a drink," music to my ears. And he said, not horrible. Yeah. And you want to try and learn this business? And I went, "Are you kidding me?" And I actually did it initially because I needed money. But then about maybe one shift in, so you know that feeling. Oh, yeah. Your jaw drops and you go, man.
I'll tell you, my first experience with radio was not in radio. Yeah. When I worked for the telephone company, I got a call to go talk to a radio station about their telephone lines. Wow. This was in downtown Kansas City. And the station was WHB. It was top 40, and I had listened to it on a crystal radio set when I was a kid, at night, with under the pillow. Anyway, I could not believe it. So I go to the building. It's a tall downtown building, and I go up to the floor. The elevator opens. It's WHB, and there's nothing there. It is a big, empty space. Picture any building that you go into, all the chairs, all the offices, there's nothing there. In the middle of the floor is a glassed-off building, a little room, and that's WHB. That's all there was that I knew of. And the disc jockey sat in there, and it had the records and all that kind of stuff. And they're playing, they only had 40 they would play. But it was like, oh, man, talk about a bubble bursting.
Oh, sure.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
You picture as you're growing up, and then you experience this, and it's nothing. But anyway, then I was ready for small town, grow up with it, radio kind of
Those
stuff.
guys had great voices, and you meet them, they look like me. I thought everyone would be Rock Hudson,
Yeah.
Well, I could talk. And, you meet these guys, and there's a romance to it. I tell people, it's more than what you think, and it's probably a lot less.
Yeah.
But it still had that great mystique.
Yeah.
You're working on the radio. And
so who was your best get, your interview that you look back on?
The one that sticks with me?
Yeah.
Norman Mailer.
Oh.
And when I was an undergrad, I took an entire, almost a year study of Mailer's work. I love Norman Mailer. I read The Deer Park. I read Naked and the Dead. I read Armies of the Night. I read, Fire on the Moon, Execution. I read it all. And so Mailer had a book called Harlot's Ghost. Yeah. And it's about the CIA. And I went out of my way because, these guys that just affected me. I met many. Gene Shepard was another one. Guys that just, took your heart away. So Mailer comes in, and he's got I don't know which number wife, and she's beautiful. Same thing with Pappy Boyington. Boyington was like that.
Yeah.
This beautiful woman, laid out. And I had read Harlot's Ghost, and I'm sitting in a break going, I'm actually sitting here with Norman Mailer. And we talked about all of his stuff that he had done and everything about his life. He boxed, everything that he did.
Yeah.
So the show's over. And he stands up, and I still remember, and he said, what did you think of the book? And he knew that I had read him, and I said, why? I don't know why. And I said, it isn't as good as the other things you've done.
Yeah.
And he says, thank you. And he shook my hand. He signed the book. I have a signed Mailer. And he left.
Wow.
And I never got over that he was, or we were talking about Ken Keise. I met Ken Keise. Gene Shepard. Gene Shepard's America. One of my, and I met Gene Shepard before he passed away. And I'm sitting there, and I said, I know you. And yet he is like, hey, man, where's the bathroom? Kind of thing. And that was the stuff that to me was, it was important. That's what you came away with. That these guys, I met Jimmy Carter, spent time with Jimmy Carter. Same thing. It's like, I'm sitting there with Jimmy Carter, or any of these guys, and there's some guy with his feet up, and he's just a guy. Mm-hmm. And he's probably as crazy as you are. And this is a business that I think attracts it. There's something about, I can't explain it, but look at the legends that you knew.
Oh, yeah.
Look at Burt Reynolds, my God. Or Dennis Weaver, or the Wayne family. What are you doing with them?
Oh, exactly. And I'll tell you something about the Wayne family. I had known the granddaughter, Anita, for years. We'd done a lot of stuff together, been at a lot of events. And so I did this, I was doing all this auction stuff. Well, my daughter lives in Dallas where they were going to have the auction. And I said, I said to Anita, well, I think I'll tell Aaron that this is going on and everything, and she may stop by. And so what happened was she did. She went over to the auction house, and she had met Anita in Oklahoma City, where I'd gotten an award at the National Cowboy Museum. And so she went immediately, stopped a conversation she was having, went over to our daughter, and welcomed her, and they stood there and talked, and then they took her by the arm and walked over to Ethan and Marissa, the children, who were engaged in conversation, and they said, we're interrupting. Ethan, Marissa, come here, this is Jeff's daughter.
Wow.
And they stopped their conversation immediately, went over with my daughter, and they're all huddled together having a conversation and just talking about stuff. And pretty soon Aaron was leaving, and people came up to her and said, now, are you one of the Wayne children? You know, are you in the family? Yeah. We saw you all together. But no, I mean, to me, that's great that they would treat my daughter that way.
See, but that's the stuff, you know. And, you know, I told this story about getting in the punch-up with that guy in front of Dale Evans.
Oh, yeah.
And it was on. It was one of those, you know, highlights in radio history, but Dean Reed, it was on.
Yeah.
And with his great big buddy. And I had Mary Kay Morrow with me, and we're in it. And Dale Evans, who was here for the Christian Boys Ranch, and I'm so over the moon. I'm going to talk to Dale Evans. I grew up on Dale Evans.
Sure.
And I went, oh man, I just got into this this moment with this idiot, you know. And I went over. I told her, I knelt down. She was in this big chair.
Yeah.
I said, Miss Evans, I said, I'm very sorry. And she had watched the whole thing and what he had said and everything to start it up. And she said to me, she said, Roy would have been proud of you. And then we did, like, there's the cops are there and the television people show up. And I'm trying to do an interview with Dale Evans. And she sent me pictures of her as a big band singer.
Yeah, oh yeah.
She was incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
I can see why Roy thought. So now, you know, Jeff Hildebrandt said, and you snuck out the back door. Crowley, who was really doing all the hard work, did not know that you had pulled the pin.
Well, he didn't talk to me when I was here.
Well, he didn't talk to anybody. He's got a dog. They come to work. Said and done. And, you know, I can't lure you back. I've tried to. Tommy's going to do a little bit with us, and he's... So, now what? Because, I mean...
Well, I'm writing. I write stuff. Poetry, a lot of Christian cowboy style poetry. I wrote a book a few years ago for the Gunsmoke 50th anniversary, which was a compilation of interviews that I'd done with people who were on Gunsmoke, Jim Arness, Dennis Weaver, Buck Taylor, different people who had been on there, just their memories. And I've gotten good response from that. People are saying, and I don't want to pat myself on the back because it hurts, but
at my arm.
But one guy wrote, he said, I've read all these books about Gunsmoke, and this little book tells me more than I got anywhere, answers my questions. So anyway, it's on Amazon, and it's doing really well. It's called Gunsmoke Memories, and better than anything else I write, you know. So it should tell me something. But I'm doing that. I'm involved in a food pantry outreach program, and then I'm still available to come back here and do some stuff from time to time. I record some of my poetry for Tom that he runs on the weekends on KRKS. And so, you know, there are little things to keep me busy, but I kind of miss having somewhere to go.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't miss being there.
Yeah.
And doing the job.
I mean, I remember, we had great, and this is a great on-air talk, but we had off-air talks about stuff, Jeff and I. And I would sit in the newsroom, or he'd come in the studio, put our feet up and talk about the business and life and where things are going. And I knew somewhere in the back of my head, I said, I think he's doing the clubhouse turn right now. You know, he's heading home.
Yeah.
And I just, honestly, I was saddened because, first of all, I don't see you. And, you know, in spite of all the cool stuff we were able to do on a radio show because of you, but I miss you. And you need to know that. I'm glad you came in to do this with us.
Thank you.
Oh.
You never call, you never write.
Crowley didn't even know you were gone. What was the great line of Cowboy, the country music? I can't miss you if you don't go away.
That's right.
Anyhow, he's a good man. And a heart and soul of the guys like this in the business. Do you think there's guys like us breaking into business now? I mean, I do, but, you know.
I don't know any.
Yeah.
I don't know any.
But the way in isn't like what we do.
No. Now the business has changed so much. There just is not the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nobody around to no mentoring of any import that's going on.
Yeah. But our business, talk radio, has totally gotten away from itself. I mean, it's, they don't pay the attention to the rules. It's just gone. Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's there. I want to say there's not as much education. I mean, people don't read like you read. People aren't as well read, aren't as informed as you are.
It's kind of
it's on KNUS. I mean, we have a whole stable of people who are one of a kind. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are well read and share opinions that the masses share, but they're also able to explain why they feel the way they feel.
That's good.
And you're right. They're just, there's a lot of people out there who argue just for the sake of arguing, but they can't back up. And I hate to get into politics, but it's like the people who claim the election was stolen that you were talking about earlier. The election's stolen. We can't prove it, but we know it.
Well,
they
believe it.
They believe. Yeah. Anyway,
the one and only Jeff Hildebrandt. Next week we shoot with George Brockler, and Brockler just surprised everybody when he came on to say exactly that. The election was stolen. We got to stop this. It's time to make a change in Colorado. And I was taken back by it on the radio show.
Yeah.
I miss you very much. And
thank you.
There's just nobody better. Jeff Hildebrandt. We're going to do a transfer here real quick and get Tommy Moller in here to say goodbye. So stay right here, and everything continues. We continue episode 6 of The Shoot, by the way, now a podcast. You go to 710 KNUS/Peter Boyles and click on it so you can hear it as well as see it. We're saying goodbye, and again, I want to thank Dr. Julie McCallan at Cenegenics. Look at me. I mean, I'm an old man. She changed my life and saved it. So, Dr. McCallan, read the crawl. Give her a call. She's the best. Now, as we were saying goodbye moments ago to the one and only Jeff Hildebrandt, also saying goodbye to somebody that I met when I came in here some 8 years ago, and Tom Moller. And Tommy was he was my partner in the morning. And now, after these many years, Hildebrandt leaves, you go with him, or the other way around. First of all, thanks for stepping in and doing this. We're taping this on a Thursday, on the 14th of October, and tomorrow the 15th.
That's it.
Why'd you decide, first of all, before we do all the background stuff, why'd you decide? I mean, why did you decide that was it?
Well, several reasons, really. I'm a month and a half older than you are.
No, and it shows.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I have not been as consistent as I want to be professionally, and that's been bothering me. And as you know, I'm a Christian, and I really feel a call to devote more of my time to present Jesus Christ to people who are on the streets, who are willing to change, not to reinforce their laziness and all that, but to people who most churches are not welcoming to. Most people are not welcome in, these people, not welcome in most churches. And I'm feeling a call to one-on-one work with them, and in many ways, from a Christian standpoint, do what you're talking about with Step Denver, not just handouts, letting people continue to be worthless, but to shepherd them, bring them along, and people who are willing to work, to find work, help them find work. In other words, not do stuff for them that they can't do for themselves. I'm really feeling a God-given call for that.
It's that great line. Do for me what I will not do for myself. Take care of me. And that's the trap the city's in.
That's right.
In.
That's right.
Taking care of people.
So that's going to take a lot of my time and a lot of my focus.
Were you raised in the church, or did you have a moment?
Well, I had a moment, yeah. Like we all did, I think, in our age group, we all went to church. So I attended church, you know. But I had a moment. Do
you mind?
Sure. No, I'd be happy to tell you about it.
What happened?
Donna wanted to end our marriage 6 years into the marriage, and she was the love of my life, still is.
Oh yeah.
And really, I've come to view her really as my trophy. And you know, what do you do with a trophy? You do it saying, "Look at what I've done."
Yeah.
You know. Well, after 6 years, she didn't want to be a trophy. You know, she didn't want to look at what I've done.
Did you marry young? Were you young?
No, I married right out of college, 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
Young.
Yeah, young. She was my college sweetheart.
All right.
And so I thought, okay, give her a couple weeks, me out of the house. She will be so...
She'll miss me.
She will miss me so bad. And so I waited a couple weeks, and I think you'd appreciate this. I went to some of the haunts after I was out of the house. Scared me because before I had a home to go home to, you know. But now I didn't have a home. I went to the bars, and it was no longer, "Hey, Tom, hey, Tom." It was, all I saw was a bunch of lonely people reinforcing their loneliness. Scared me. Really scared me.
You were in the business then?
I was in the business then. I was a rock and roll disc jockey. Afternoon drive, Santa Barbara.
Yeah. Call letters?
KIST.
4 to 7? 3 to 6?
Actually, 4 to 7.
4 to 7?
Yeah.
Afternoon drive?
Afternoon drive, yeah.
Top 40?
Yeah, top 40. Rock and roll.
Playing the hits.
On the go on the Tommy Moller Show.
And she told you to leave?
And she told me to leave. And it didn't take long for me to think, I don't want this life. You know, before, as a married guy, I thought, man, this is great. You know, and people know who you are. Hey, I'll buy you a drink. Okay, yeah, you know, all that stuff. And so now I saw a bunch of lonely people reinforcing each other's loneliness. So 2 weeks go by. I lined up lunch for her. Went to have lunch, and I thought, I'm going to make my move now, because she's going to be so...
Impressed.
So impressed. So lonely without me there, you know.
Yeah.
And, man, I went from this psyched up, positive mental attitude. It was a long lunch, because, you know, from lunchtime on down, from positive mental attitude to reality.
And you had to go to work.
Well, at that time I was in sales, advertising sales.
Okay, all right.
And so I was doing kind of freelance disc jockey work just to stay on the air, but I was doing advertising sales. So it was my...
That's even a more frightening
it is,
than radio.
Yeah, it is. And she said, "No way, Jose, there is no way I'm letting you in the house." And from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 5 o'clock, she let me know every way that she could that there was no way. And I went from this unreality to reality, crashed. And so I went back up to the radio station. The offices were closed by the time. That's why I know it was a long lunch. And because the only people who were there were disc jockeys and the news people in the studios. And and I was heading to the balcony. We had a balcony on the 6th floor. And I had thoughts of jumping. Now, who knows, you know. I think the overriding thought was, I'm going to jump, and boy, will she feel bad. You know.
I'll show you.
I'll you.
Take my life.
Oh, gee. And I, this is no exaggeration, Pete, I cried out with a prayer, the first prayer in my life at age 28 that I really meant. And I just said, God, help me. And believe it or not, I felt the Holy Spirit come into my body. And I remember going, whoa, I just became a Christian.
Wow.
You know? and I'd heard of people being born again and all that. I just became a Christian. Well, that was the beginning of it, and 2 weeks later, under completely separate circumstances, she became a Christian under no contact with me.
You never told me this before.
Yeah, no, never have. Never had an occasion to. And 2 weeks later, she became a Christian. She called me and said, we got a lot of work to do. Wow. And
well, she's brilliant. I mean, we're talking about great marriages.
Yeah. And then we went to church. There was a church meeting she wanted to take me to. And I thought, what is this? I didn't want to screw things up, but what's going on here? And we went to this service. It was a person giving her testimony, and they closed the service by singing "How Great Thou Art," and I say that she cried on the first verse, I cried on the second verse, and we cried together in the third. She took my hand. First tenderness she gave me in 2 years' time. Took my hand, and man, I'm telling you. And then we went home, to our home, and said, we got some things to talk about. And I held the side of the chairs and said, "You're right." And that was the beginning of my Christian journey and the continuation of my marriage.
And this business, and we just spoke with Hildebrand, and we've, done so many shows with people from the business. Mm-hmm. What do you think of radio now versus when you were, coming up and making your way?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what phase of radio you're talking about. Just radio generally. When I was coming up, I was a rock and roller. In fact, I started in news in Lansing, Michigan, but I was not a news hound. And so I did news, followed Governor George Romney around, the Mitt's daddy. Yeah. And that was news. I mean, that was news without an agenda. Yeah. And that was when you could trust what the Associated Press said. And that's the one thing. You heard it on the radio, you could trust it. Mm-hmm. That was when you pronounced words properly. But I was also, my heart was to be a disc jockey, rock and roll disc jockey, until I got it out of my system. And then my plan was to go into sales and management, which was the path to money.
That's the path, sure.
Yeah.
It's never out of... Right. No on-air guy ever becomes the boss.
Right, that's right.
They don't trust us.
That's right. And rightly so.
And rightly so. I say all the time. But you want to be in management? Yeah, get out of... quit this.
But it was great, because it was live radio. Please. I mean, whether you were doing country, which you and Bob and I did, or rock and roll, and it was tremendous, way different than now,
Yeah.
Way different than now.
Jeffrey just spoke with us, and, I look back, and I'm trying to write, and we mentioned Bob Lee. Mm-hmm. And without Bob, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I became Bob's partner in KLAK, at a hit show, co-alcoholics, practicing alcoholics.
Yeah, right.
And, hey, here you go. Here's the keys to the whatever you want.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Yeah, that was devastating.
And, of course, I ended up being partners with Bob on a Christian radio station. And I'm telling you, that was among the most fun things I've done in radio, working with Bob. And
took me to school, taught me.
Yeah?
The good and the bad.
Yeah, right. Which is also radio back then, is that you had the good and the bad going, hand in hand together.
We were talking with Jeff. The guys that taught me, or I learned from, were all former top 40 jocks of the 50s. They were top 40 disc jockeys. Bobby was in Detroit, Mike McEwen, Handsome Roger, all those guys. They were like Charlie Martin. Yeah. I mean, they were disc jockeys.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And as a matter of fact, what's interesting might be interesting to you, I was manager of that station. I was on the air with Bob, but I hired him to do disc jockey, be a disc jockey, and And I knew him as Bob Lee.
Yeah.
I knew that he had been on the air with you, and of course was with Mike McEwen on KHOW.
Sure.
But I didn't know him as Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee, the Rockin' Rebel.
The Rockin' Rebel. Yeah. Now, I was at Michigan State.
WJBK Detroit.
He was WJBK in Detroit. And so I told Bob, I said, we're just a little radio station, a little Christian radio station. I'm not going to be able to pay you what you're used to or whatever, but I want to tell you, here's what, I'm not going to play games with you, here's what I can pay you. You want any time off to do gigs, you want talent fee, you got it.
Yeah.
And we shook hands on it. And then I said, by the way, I see from your resume, you worked at WJBK in Detroit. I was down the road from you at WILS in Lansing. And Bob, you can almost conceive Bob going, well, my real name is Robert E. Lee.
That's his real name, it is.
It is. It wasn't a radio name.
Right.
My real name was Radio Lee, and he kind of went like this. And he says, I did a gig, I was known as the Rockin' Rebel. Well, he had downplayed it like it was something nobody knew. I said, you were the Rockin' Rebel?
He was more than that.
That's right. I said, I hired the Rockin' Rebel?
Yeah.
I mean, it was wonderful to...
He was a radio actor. He was an ingenue.
That's right. That's right.
And I met guys that came through town, and he knew Wolfman Jack.
Yeah.
He told stories. They were radio actors.
That's right.
Not radioactive. They were radio. They were
out of WXYZ in Detroit.
Challenge of the Yukon.
That's right.
So
all those
Ranger,
radio dramas.
The knock off the Ranger was from Bob.
Yeah.
And he actually did that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was tight with all the Motown guys.
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder would go to the hops, as they said, with him.
Yeah.
I mean, he legitimately, for the good and the bad, put his arm around me. He said, you got talent, let me show you what to do.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Yeah, right.
But no, without Bob.
Yeah. Well, it was a high point in my radio career, which is now 49 years worth, and working with him, and then, of course, getting to know you through him.
That's kind, but I'm not in his league. I mean, he did a lot of. I mean, he was, and he went to California to be an actor. And, it was almost a bittersweet thing with Bob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that.
I would go and see him in the end. And
I can understand that. I lost contact with him in the end.
I
did buy him lunch in L.A. once, as an actor, you're...
But spoke at his funeral, and still hear once in a while from his kids.
Yeah.
I mean, he was... So now, all of this, and, you'll do the last gig tomorrow morning, and I'll still see you, but...
Yeah, I'll be doing the FM, so I'll still be in the orbit
I guess
here.
Hildebrandt's still going to do some stuff with you, too, which makes me happy, because then I'll see you two guys. But
did he tell you that? Because I
kind of said I'm going to do some stuff for Tom.
He's been kind of making me hang,
it's Hildebrand, Leave me with something. What would you like people to know about where we are, what this is all about? And it's been 8.5 years we spent together.
Yes.
It's a long time.
I know it is.
Yeah.
It really is. And I can tell you, I suppose it's like writing my own.
No, but we have to. I'm writing stuff, and I'm thinking, how's this going to hold up?
Yeah. You and I've talked about stuff like this because I am and was a radio guy.
Yeah.
That's
Oh yeah.
And that's what you are.
Sure.
I'm not. I think of our grandchildren.
Oh, yeah.
They grow up internet guys, social media guys, streaming and things that I don't understand. I am a radio guy.
I know you.
Since I was in 8th grade, I was at the Berrien County Youth Fair in Michigan, walking down the Midway, and I saw a St. Joe, Michigan radio station broadcasting just off the Midway, and I was drawn to it.
Sure.
And I was saying, wow, there's a radio station there. There's a 8th grade, and I walked into a poll. I was so enamored by what they did.
And I think that's all true.
And
the minute you know, you know.
I knew. And I was a radio guy from that moment on. So if I were to write my own obituary to the Peter Boyles show, it would be he was a radio guy.
Care. Yeah.
I care.
I said, I remember me and my grandmother, my mother, and my sister marching around the breakfast table to Don McNeil.
Don McNeil.
It's an early, and
right. That's right.
They had Don McNeil's breakfast. Now, I don't know how old I was, 3.
Yeah.
And I thought, how cool is this? And then I'm the luckiest guy. I say this all the time, and I'm sure you would say it as well. Luckiest guy I've ever met's me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I'm blessed to have worked with you the last 8. I mean it. I
was going to talk. Tommy's here first in the morning. I get here about 20 to 4. You've been here. Then Billy comes in. We don't. And Mark comes in eventually, and other guys start showing up. Morning radio is the answer to anything you ever wanted to do. It really is. Because if you think of the legendary Lewis and Floorwax, Hal and Charlie, Bob and I Got Lucky. Stephen B. and the Hawk.
And where I grew up, Dick Biondi at WLS.
And when we met Wolfman Jack, and he knew Bob. Bob said, Bob, because they're both Bob.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, damn, you know the Wolfman, and so it's a circle.
And I did succeed in going through sales into management, but my heart has always been on the air. And so here I am again on the air, a former general manager who does news with you and kibitz with you the first half hour of the show. And
we always said that, and it was a Bob Lee line when people talk about, having an office with a lock, and Bob said, our office is down the hall, says men on the door. That was a Bob Lee line. And I always went with that. If you've got an office with you can lock the door, you're no longer an on-air guy.
Yeah, that's true.
And if, like when the phone rings, you're never sure. But I think that's what keeps it going, is it's unsure, fall in love with, and
that is true. Oh, that is true, because you can be out of work, but you're still in radio in your heart.
Yeah, sure. I always I'm trying to write this, radio is the woman in the red dress. She's always right around the corner. You see her, and then she's gone. You can glimpse her, and she's gone. So the woman, the lady in the red dress, it's radio. And once you fall in love with that lady, you're sunk. Because you're going to,
That's true.
Oh.
She can lead you around.
I know what I've done for love.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss you.
Hey.
You're one of the, this is really legitimately saying goodbye to Hildebrand. Not saying goodbye, but Hildebrand and to Tom. The 8.5 years I've spent here, those guys have made it work. Thank you to Dr. McCallum. We'll do radio again tomorrow morning. Thanks to Mark Crowley who puts it together. But Dr. Julie McCallum, the reason I'm sitting here is you. George Brockler is in that seat next week to do the shoot. Mark Crowley, you made it happen. Take care of yourselves, everybody. See you next time here and on the air tomorrow morning at 5. Thank you.